Since its introduction, wish magic within Ninjago has made little to no sense. It has never exactly been clear on what it could truly do. And I've made a video on wish magic once before, and if you haven't checked out that video, I would highly recommend you do so. But it was mainly the concept of wish magic between the different jinns that we have seen throughout the course of the show. But the thing is that there's a whole nother aspect to the wishes that we never actually covered in that moment. And that is a looming question that people have had about Skybound basically since it initially came out. Towards the end of the season, there is a very high priority when it does come to Jay. More specifically, the fact that he has the last wish. But the thing is that is the creation of a fairly major plot hole. But I think I do have the answer as to how this was simply the case. So hear me out on this one, and let me talk you through why I believe it does actually make sense to believe that Jay was the only one that could have granted the wish that could have stopped Narcon. Of course, there are a lot of questions that go into it, and I will answer them all the best I can. But sit back, relax, and let's talk about how Jay truly did have the last wish. Now, the foundation of everything that we're talking about does rely on our understanding of how Narcon specifically does handle his wishes. Of course, he does have his own rules that he has to abide by. No love, no death, or more wishes. But the thing is that ultimately, he is still using those wishes to twist them into his own belief, his own game, and his own source of more power. He ultimately has these wishes for himself, and he has a very specific game that he does play. He very rarely goes off of his own script when it does come to the wishes. The furthest he ever gone from his own script was actually with Zane, and you can actually tell that Narcon didn't like that because he actually ends up using Zane's own words against Flintlock later on in the season. So the thing is that he knows definitively what he wants the person to be doing with every single wish, and you can actually see that reflected in every single person that we have seen. So let's home in here specifically on the ninja and analyze how Narcon truly plays his game, and how Jay ultimately is the reason why there was only one wish left. If you look at his wishes, they do follow a certain formula. The first wish is always a wish that is granted basically to the wording, but ultimately in some sort of way to allure you into the second wish. Typically speaking, by some sort of inconvenience or by some sort of provocation. It's typically just something that's designed for more. Kai's first wish was for Narcon to actually take him back to the correct moment in time, because Narcon shuttled him away elsewhere and he never actually listened to what Kai's request was. He ends up way too far back in time, ultimately speaking, needing a second wish. Zane's first wish was that Narcon would not twist his words. Initially speaking, you may think that's actually fine, but eventually this does allure Zane into making a second wish because he never actually got what he truly needed in his eyes to defeat Narcon. Cole's first wish was to actually have the Vengestone make their powers stronger. It ultimately made their powers too strong, ergo the wish was officially useless. So Cole needed a new method to be able to defeat Narcon. Nia wished that someone actually told her that they knew that they were going to be using wishes. This basically tells Nia just to make another wish. It is the most literal sense when it does come to wish magic. You then get to Lloyd, who wished that Flintlock was a lousy shot. You wish that Flintlock was not able to actually use what he needed to do. The thing is that this also does lure Lloyd into making another wish, because it provided a tactical advantage within the fight, and Lloyd by all accounts saw that and realized that it would be the benefit to actually winning. And then you get lastly to Jay himself. Jay's first wish was that he wasn't actually born in a junkyard, and it made him realize that he was in fact adopted and actually the son of Cliff Gordon. Again, it sparks Jay's curiosity in a lot of different ways, and that's what Narcon hoped to truly be the case. But you can see that every single one of these wishes had some sort of aspect to it that made you want to have another wish, all part of his plan. This leads into the all-important second wish, and this is the wish that ultimately is what makes you suffer. This is the wish that gets you in the position that Narcon wants you to be in. It is what makes you be in the position to make the third wish. Again, starting off, Kai wished that he could go back to when Ninjago had the women going after him, but it was too literal. It entered this zombie-like scenario where he would have been torn to ribbons. Ultimately, Kai would have been gone if it wasn't for an all-important third wish. Zane wished that no damage would be done upon him, and if it was, it would be done onto Narcon tenfold. The thing is that Narcon doesn't physically harm Zane. Narcon just simply deletes parts of his hard drive mainly being pixel. It's not physical damage, it's nowhere near it, so he's not actually breaking the wish, but he is causing emotional distress, and Zane couldn't handle the fact that Pixel was officially gone. Cole also asked just simply that Narukon never had his blade. By all accounts, the wish was granted, but Narukon actually had the sword go into Flintlock's hands, ergo going back to Narukon. A useless wish, and Cole was suffering because of it, because he never actually had the advantage that he was looking for. Nia wished that Cole hadn't wished them all out of the ship. Ultimately, Nia just wanted to not be floating within the middle of the air, and again, she kind of suffers for it, because she doesn't really get much from this wish. She just gets Narukon basically gloating, again essentially provoking it into another wish because she is wasting her wishes. And Lloyd just simply wanted to be more wise like Wu. It came at the consequence though of Wu's age. This is ultimately a bad thing in similar vein to Kai, because it would have led to him being gone, because he just got older and older and eventually would have withered away. And that's the thing, all of them again are following this scheme. They're all suffering because of the second wish, needing the third wish, and by all accounts it was Narukon's plan. But the thing is that you then get to Jay. Jay's second wish completely broke this scheme. Jay's wish is just simply that he wasn't alone with Narukon, which provokes Nia to actually be there. The thing is that there's no way of twisting this wish, and you can tell that Narukon realized it because he got frustrated. The thing is that there was no way to go around it, and Jay by all account broke the scheme. There was nothing that Narukon could have done in that moment, so Jay was officially outside of the loop. Which brings us into the all-important third wish, and if you are a part of Narukon's scheme, you actually are in exactly where he wants you to be. He wants you to wish it all away, because that is what ultimately grants you the power. And the thing is that this does work on some of the ninja. Zane ultimately wished it away because he couldn't handle not having Pixel, and that's fairly honourable, and honestly does kind of make sense. Kai also wished it away because he basically had no other solution. He was just in a position where he had nothing else that he could do. Kai had to wish it away, otherwise he would have been gone. But what if you did actually break outside of this loop, and apart from Jay, you actually find that a couple of the ninja actually did. You will note that 3 of them outside of Jay did do it. Cole, for example, he just simply wished everyone out of Misfortune's Keep. He was meant to wish that he would go away, but the thing is that his second wish did cause him to suffer, but not in the correct sense. Ultimately, Cole had no reason to grant this wish, ergo he kind of did fall out of the loop, or more specifically, Narukon just simply couldn't get to him in time. But then you also get to Nia, who wished that the clouds would stop them from falling. There is an aspect of suffering to this like the second wish, but the thing is that it basically is exactly how it happens. The thing is that Nia asks for this wish, and it does happen. And then Lloyd asks for a sword so he can pierce the cloud, which allows for Jay and Nia to escape. Again, he was suffering because of the second wish, but Narukon just simply didn't get to him in time. So you have these moments where someone actually breaks out of the loop in the very last moment. But the thing is that it reveals something very important about the wishes. In the most literal sense, the third wish that Narukon grants is the honest wish. It is the wish that he doesn't twist. The first wish, like I said, is to allure you into the second. The second's for suffering. The third one is true. The thing is that whether or not you ask to be wished away or if you want something else, you do quite literally get what you want. And that is, by all account, by design. But if you look at it, Lloyd asked for a sword. He got a sword. Nia asked for the clouds to stop them from falling. They stopped her from falling. Cole wanted everyone out of Misfortune's Keep. They got out of Misfortune's Keep. There was nothing second guessing about these wishes. They are the most honest that Narukon can truly be. And you can see that he is honest, because when he grants Lloyd's wish specifically, he is very confused. He is just like, oh, okay, there you go, there's your sword. There's nothing second guessing about it. And again, it applies then to Jay. A lot of people interpret the final moment in Skybound between Narukon and Jay as Narukon just simply surrendering, and I do like that, and I do think he does to an extent. But the thing is that regardless of it, Narukon would have had to have granted the wish in the honest sense, because that is how he is doing it all the time. If you look back just a couple episodes before, when they're in the lighthouse, there is a reason why Narukon doesn't allow Jay to actually get the wish off. He doesn't allow Jay to actually say what he wants, because Narukon knew he would have had to have granted it honestly. Narukon knew that that was the only option. It's not Narukon surrendering, it's Narukon just simply doing what he had to do. And that is actually the point. Narukon had to grant the wish honestly, and that is now where we're gonna have to harp back to the initial question, because you may be wondering, why is me explaining how Narukon handled the wishes important to why Jay is the only one with the wish? And that is the literal fact. The thing is that by all accounts, this is something that Narukon could have had done through anyone, but the thing is that Jay was officially at the point of honesty. Jay was at the point where he could actually get a wish actually granted to their specification, and Narukon couldn't have twisted it in any way. So say if you asked any of the secondary ninja team to ask Narukon for a wish, say if Ronan just asked his first wish for Narukon to be human, the thing is that Narukon would have been able to twist it in some way, because that is how the wishes are designed. It is something that they couldn't have gotten away with if it wasn't for the fact that Jay was out of the loop. All of the others would have just ended up in the sword if it wasn't for Jay just doing it himself. So this is where I officially actually want to call in an audible when it does come to this whole mess when it comes to the final wish. Jay, yes, has got the final wish, but more specifically, Jay has the last viable wish. Jay has the last wish that could truly accomplish what they wanted. I believe that everyone else could have had wishes granted if they simply wanted to. It makes sense to believe that that is the case. But because Jay was the only one that had an honest wish left, he is the only one that could have stopped Narukon because of it. And honestly, whilst this explanation does truly feel like enough for me in a lot of different ways, I was still almost left unsatisfied, because there is one more thing about wish magic that truly didn't make sense to me, and that is the idea that Narukon has to grant every single wish. Lloyd remarks in the episode Wishmasters that if Narukon is within earshot, he has to grant the wish, and in my opinion, this is a complete can of bones idea. The thing is that if Narukon has to grant every single wish as long as it's within earshot, it does beg the question as to why a lot more people haven't asked for wishes from Narukon. It's almost like Narukon is just simply at anyone's beck and peril. And it did lead me to wonder if whether or not there was more to the art of granting wishes than we have initially perceived. And honestly, I think there truly is. I think Lloyd's statement of if he's within earshot he has to grant the wish is both true and also false. I think it is specifically true in the case of the ninja, but not in the case of a general public. I believe that when you do take a step back and look at how Narukon grants wishes, there is some sort of element of refusal, or some sort of element of him not having to grant it if he truly didn't want to. I think that there is some sort of motion that does imply that Narukon has got a choice in the matter, and there is a specific wish that does make me believe that this is the case. Or more specifically two. The first one actually does come from Dogshank. Dogshank's wish is that she was the person that typically did stand out. Now the thing is that you can interpret this as Narukon just simply twisting the wish, but Narukon doesn't have a reason to actually twist the wishes of his own crew. So Narukon by all accounts just made Dogshank into something that he actually wanted. He made Dogshank into a warrior instead of the prettiest girl. He by all accounts changed the wish. He doesn't actually grant the wish that was asked upon him. He basically refused and just used it to his own advantage. And the other person was actually Doubloon. Doubloon actually wished that he didn't have to face the punishment for trying to steal Narukon's gold, but instead Narukon just uses it to transform it into a silent, two-faced individual and another member of the crew. This again is literally not the wish that Doubloon asked for. It is actually by any count the opposite, because he was by all account punished. The thing is that these aren't wishes that were asked of Narukon, and it honestly does come across like he just simply refused to grant them. So if this is the case and Narukon can just simply refuse to actually grant wishes, then what does this mean for the larger scope? What does it mean when it does come to Jay having the last wish? Well, it implies, simply put, that Narukon just simply doesn't enter the deal with anyone else after the point of the ninja. Narukon ultimately wanted the power of the ninja to be able to recreate Ninjago. He just wanted enough power to be able to gain infinite wishes. So what if, when Narukon had enough power to do what he needed to do, he just never entered the deal once more? But the thing is that it still makes Lloyd correct. As long as you enter the deal, you can actually have your final wish, and you have to have your wishes granted by Narukon. And who actually has that to be the case? Well, it's Jay. I think it honestly does make sense when you look at it in this range. Because if you now take both of these things that I have discussed and you put into one cohesive narrative, you completely resolve the whole point of J's last wish, and you have a reason why it is actually the last one of the lot. You have a version of J that actually did enter the deal with Nardocan. Nardocan now has to answer the wishes because he has actually began wishing with J, and J just simply broke out of the loop and had the honest wish left. He was not suffering from the first or the second one, so ergo, he had a free wish that he could have as he pleased. I believe this is why Jay had the last wish. He was just the last person within the deal, and he did have the best opportunity of the bunch. But that is my explanation as to why Jay did in fact have the last wish. But I would love to hear your thoughts when it does come to this theory, and more specifically the explanation. Honestly, it's extremely convoluted, and I hope you were able to track along with me, but the thing is that this was Skybound, and you kind of have to be convoluted for things to make sense. But I do believe I have a very valid explanation, and I do think it completely clears up the concept of the last wish. But like I said, I would love to know what you guys think, because I do think it's a very interesting one. But that is today's video, and I do hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much for watching, and if you did enjoy, please consider subscribing. I love talking about Ninjago with more people, and if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could become a channel member and join the legends on screen. A particular shout out to Grandmaster Sensei 28208 for being an eternal legend. Thank you very much, my friend. But like I said guys, thank you very much for watching, and take care. Okay, bye!